Hi there, it's Christina here, and today we're going to talk about what you can do, practically speaking, when you're having a craving and trying to avoid giving into it, or in those times where there's something that you just want to eat, but you know it's not the best choice for you. So I'm going to share just a really practical strategy and what you can do in those moments to help you avoid giving in and avoid overeating, essentially. Because I think, for most of us, when we can figure out how to deal with those situations, we feel so much more in control of food, and it's so much easier to lose weight. So it's a really important topic to dive into. So for those of you who are new to me, really quick, I'm Christina Johnson, a transformational nutrition coach, and I help people who have been struggling for years with going from one diet to the next, with losing weight and then gaining it back again, and really just struggling with their relationship with food, with their body, with themselves. And what I do is help people create a clean and mindful eating lifestyle so that you can lose weight for good and have a better relationship with food. And so, this is just a strategy that I've seen work really well for people, and dealing in those situations, knowing what to do when you're having a craving is really important to being able to reach your weight loss goal and then to be able to maintain it, because that truly is key as well. So as we go along here, this is part 3 in our series on emotional eating that I've been doing throughout the month. So if you've missed part 1 and 2, those parts really talked more about what is emotional eating and how do you tell if you are an emotional eater. What I have discovered from talking with lots and lots of people about emotional eating is that most of us don't realize how often emotional eating happens. So if you haven't yet watched part 1 and part 2 in this series, be sure to do that, because that'll just help you begin to understand if you are an emotional eater when it happens, and help you start to figure out some of the most common triggers that cause emotional eating. So be sure to go check those out. But today, part 3, and then next week in part 4, we're going to focus on what do you do about this? Because, now that we've kind of raised awareness about the issue of emotional eating, we want to start taking some steps towards addressing this issue. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And so I'm curious, if you're watching live or if you're watching in a replay, I'm curious to know, what do you do? So when you are having a craving, or you just want to eat something that you know isn't a healthy choice, what do you do in those moments to avoid giving in? So I'd love just to hear some insights on your own personal experience with that. But here is what I recommend. And so the first step truly is becoming aware of how often it happens and noticing when we're wanting to eat because of emotions. So the truth is that there are times you eat when you're actually physically hungry, when your stomach is empty, when you need to refuel for energy, for your body needs those calories. And so that is eating for physical hunger. So that type of eating is amazing. And then we have all these other times where we just want to eat, where you want something sweet after a meal, or something just sounds good, or you're stressed out or tired or bored or lonely and just want to eat something to kind of make you feel better, or to not have to feel. And so truly the first step in overcoming emotional eating and giving into cravings is becoming aware in the moment of when it's happening and just starting to notice it. And so like I said, that's really what I talked about in the last 2 videos, so be sure to go back and watch those. But the next step then is really being willing to sit with and acknowledge how we're feeling in the moment. So, oftentimes instead of, wanting to deal with our feelings, instead of wanting to feel lonely or sad or tired or stressed, we just eat. And there's something in our brain that just is triggered in a millisecond that tells us if you eat, you will feel better. And so we need to be aware of when that's happening, and then instead of eating, be willing to sit with whatever the feeling is. And so just as just a little personal side note, this is something that I've learned about myself a lot in the past, probably 8 or 9 months, is that I always thought I was really good at dealing with my emotions. I'm a coach. I have a master's in counseling. Like, this is what I do for a living, and I help people all the time process with and deal with their emotions. But I realized that my own personal coping strategy, and let me know if you can relate to this, is that I would much rather just take those hard feelings, like if I was feeling stress or anxiety or worry about something, I'd rather just set it aside to deal with later and instead focus on staying busy, being productive, getting things done. And so what I've realized is that I have all these like situations, and they're not always huge things, just, simple day-to-day stressors that I never really dealt with. I never processed. And so those just kind of like remained stuck in me. And so as a result, I just felt more on edge, more impatient, more irritable, and just triggered more easily. And so for me personally, what happens then is when a new stressor or a new tough situation would come along, like I just didn't want to deal with it. And then in my mind, it would be easy to think, oh yeah, I just want some chocolate right now. Or maybe it was, I would just rather scroll through social media than dealing with my problem. Or I'd rather just zone out and watch Netflix. And so all of those strategies, social media, food, alcohol, those are coping mechanisms. Those are things that we turn to so that we don't have to deal with the real issue. And so, in the past, my advice has often been, and I think a lot of weight loss nutrition type experts will say, if you're having a craving, just drink a glass of water, just, go outside for 5 minutes, maybe set a timer and just get busy with something else. Basically, the idea is just distract yourself from how you're feeling, and then the craving will go away. But here's what I know for sure to be true. It's like, have you ever tried to hold a beach ball underwater? So you have this ball, you're holding it underwater, and it's hard to get it to stay underwater, but you kind of can for a while. But eventually that ball, the force of it just pops up out of the water to the surface. And that's what happens with our feelings. When we just continue to distract ourselves from them, to ignore them, or just to stay stuck in our mind. I mean, some of you, I'm guessing, are the ones who just like ruminate and think over and over and over about the things that are bothering us and just kind of stay in our heads. And what happens in all those situations is that we're not really dealing with the feeling. It's like we're trying to hold it underwater, but it will at some point come flying up to the surface with a vengeance. And at that point, it feels bigger. It feels more difficult to deal with. And what is truly needs to happen is that we need to feel in order to heal. And so we need to feel our emotions, because when we resist them, when we ignore them, when we struggle with them, they get bigger. They stay stuck, trapped within our body, and they feel harder to deal with. And that's when we just want to find something that will make us feel better. We just want to eat. We just want to drink wine. We just want to zone out on Netflix. And so what we need to do, instead of resisting it, is just to sit with those sometimes difficult emotions. Because what happens is those emotions, those feelings, are this like vibration in our body. And when we acknowledge it and sit with it, they will disappear within 5 to 10 minutes at the most, sometimes shorter. Because when we're not fighting with it, it's like they fizzle out and lose its power. And when the emotions are fizzling out and dissipating and losing their power, then the cravings, the desire to eat, the desire to drink, all of that will begin to fizzle out as well. Because we're not fighting or hiding or covering up what's going on. We're just dealing with it. And so yeah, the common advice, just to distract ourselves, that might be a good short-term strategy, but the real answer is to acknowledge how we're feeling, to sit with it, and to be in the present moment with that feeling. So here's what this looks like, kind of more practically speaking, and just to give you an example of how I personally, because I will tell you, I've not always been good at this. Like I said, I want to just set aside my feelings for later, which later never comes. But what I am learning is that when I am noticing that I'm feeling some stress, some tension, overwhelm, anxiety, I need to deal with it in the moment. It only takes a couple of minutes, and then I feel so much better moving forward. And so as an example for what this can look like is, let's say that you are having this craving to just eat a bunch of chocolate or eat a whole bag of chips or to just drink a bottle of wine, whatever it is. Instead of first just going and giving in with that, take like 3 to 5 minutes. It doesn't have to take long, but just sit down and get comfortable, like sit in a comfortable chair, close your eyes, and just do a scan of your body. So just turn your attention inward and check in and notice how you're feeling. Notice what sensations are there in your body. So for example, you can start at your head and just notice, are you having tension in your jaw? Are your shoulders like all clenched up and tense? Are you feeling like a tightness in your chest? Or maybe your heart feels heavy. Maybe there's a pit in your stomach or a tightness or contraction in your stomach. So just with your eyes closed, just scan your body and just notice what sensations you're experiencing in that moment. And then if you notice something, then just turn your attention to that area. So maybe you're feeling a heaviness in your heart. Just like stay in your mind's eye, just pay attention to that heaviness and just notice it. Maybe start taking a few deep breaths, because often if we're feeling stress or anxiety, we're shallow breathing. So take a few deep breaths, just notice that sensation of how you're feeling, and just like allow those deep breaths to let a feeling of calm and peace wash over you. And I will say typically for me that, it doesn't always happen right away, but within 5 minutes or so, that feeling that I'm experiencing like lessens. Maybe it doesn't always go away completely. Sometimes it does, but it usually feels less stressful. It feels less overwhelming to me because I'm not trying to ignore it. And like I said, as you are sitting with that feeling and feeling it, then what happens is that you don't want to eat as much. You don't want to just like numb out because you're allowing yourself to feel the feeling. So just a practical example of, for me, how this has shown up, something that I've noticed about myself is every Sunday I will take time to do planning for the week. So I will, plan out all my goals for the week, all the different things that I need to get done. I'll look at all my appointments. And it used to be that at the end of that planning session, I would have this like tightness in my chest. And it was really this feeling of overwhelm, because I would look at everything I was wanting to get done and realizing there is no way I'm going to get this done. And so I started the week feeling overwhelmed and anxious because I had a list of 100 things to do. And I knew it wasn't going to happen, which would then make me feel like I wasn't doing enough, or I wasn't good enough. I was failing, basically. And so what I've started to do is when I notice that tightness in my chest, I will stop my planning, I will close my eyes and just acknowledge, okay, why am I feeling this right now? And most often it's because I'm putting too much on my plate and I'm not being realistic. And so I let myself sit with that feeling of overwhelm, and then I know it's showing up to show me that I need to change my plan for the week. So at that point, then I can do something different. I can take some things off my list and be more realistic with myself, and then my week goes so much better. And so the interesting thing that I've noticed is that as I've done this more often, I don't anymore have that feeling of overwhelm when I'm starting to plan my week, because I think I've just learned, just kind of like on a subconscious level, to stop putting so much on my to-do list. And so that feeling of overwhelm isn't coming up anymore because I've just been addressing it as I go. And so, the same thing this applies really in any area of our life, but definitely when it comes to emotional eating. The more that we just in the moment stop and allow ourselves to feel whatever's feeling and to acknowledge that, then with time you will notice that it just doesn't happen as frequently because you're not always resisting the emotions. So if you're watching live or on the replay, let me know just what's one of your takeaways or what's an aha that you're having. I would love to just hear how this is landing with you. This is something newer that I haven't really taught about, especially publicly, very much. So I'd like to know just, how it's landing with you, if it feels like this is something that could be helpful for you or not. And so my challenge to you, kind of the action step that I would challenge you with, is to sometime in the next couple of days, notice when you're wanting to eat or when you're having a craving and you're not actually hungry, and take 3 to 5 minutes to just sit, to be quiet, to close your eyes, and to just notice how you're feeling, and just to breathe and just see what that does for you. I mean, it honestly can't hurt, and best case scenario is that it will help that craving, that emotional eating situation, just not feel so hard to avoid. And so, the one thing, I've talked about this the last couple of weeks, but I really believe that there's so many diets out there that tell us what to eat. And there are some programs out there, a few, that will help us deal with emotional eating and improving our relationship to food. But truly, if we want to lose weight and keep it off for good, we have to combine that. We have to figure out, how do we eat so we're balancing our blood sugar, and so that our hormones are balanced and we're feeling full and satisfied and the cravings are down. We have to do that. But then we also have to look at these reasons why we are eating when we're not actually hungry, because that is the key to lasting weight loss. And it is something that can take a little bit of time. It's something that is really helpful to have support with. And so if this approach seems like something that would be helpful for you, then the next step would be to reach out to me to schedule a complimentary consultation. And so I'll just ask you some questions to figure out what's going on for you, what's stopping you from losing weight or losing weight and keeping it off. And then if it seems like my total body reset system would be helpful for you, then I will just kind of talk about what it would look like to work together. So if you're interested in that free consultation, just go to ChristinaJohnsonWellness.com/apply, and you'll answer a couple questions, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then that will give you a link to go to my online calendar so you can find a time that works for you. So I hope that we get an opportunity to talk soon. I would love to be able to help you with this clean and mindful eating approach so that you can lose weight and keep it off for good. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments, and I will see you again next week with our last video in the series on emotional eating. Bye for now.